wage war on drugs and sexually transmitted diseases and raise their self-esteem and personal pride. You want me to teach them patriotism and good citizenship, sportsmanship and fair play, and how to register to vote, balance a checkbook, and apply for a job. You want me to check their heads for lice, recognize signs of antisocial behavior, and make sure that they all pass their final exams. You also want me to provide them with an equal education regardless of their handicaps and communicate regularly with their parents in English, Spanish, or any other language by letter, telephone, newsletter, and report card. You want me to do this with a piece of chalk, a blackboard, a bulletin board, a few books, a big smile, and a starting salary that qualifies me for food stamps. You want me to do all this, and then you tell me I can't pray? We send special love and light to all teachers, don't we? Love and light to all teachers. Jesus said, all things are possible to him who believes. I meant to look it up, the year that steam locomotives were invented. But I didn't, so I don't know the year. But I want to tell you that scientists went to the engineers and said it can't go any faster than 30 miles an hour. Because people might explode. It took a few courageous souls to go faster than 30 miles an hour for us to learn that we don't explode at 30. Our nation's first president, George Washington, had a bad sore throat and his doctors weren't sure what to do. And at that time they believed that there were liquids in our blood called bad humors, and that the way to get rid of disease was to bleed you. Our first president, George Washington, died from bleeding. And the scientists and the doctors of that time were not doing anything malicious. They were simply operating at their level of belief. And so are we, operating at the level of our current beliefs. And our beliefs are the predictors of our future, of what manifests in our lives. When I first came to Unity, I heard about Myrtle Fillmore, and I heard that she had this healing, that she took that statement that you do not inherit illness, and she took it and she prayed, and she had a change in her life. And about that time, I had about this understanding of that. You know, little bitty, teeny tiny understanding. It was just like a flicker of awareness. And today, after, I'm not even going to tell you how many years, I do have an understanding that there is nothing outside of myself that has any power greater than what I am. And that's true for each and every one of us. There is no power outside of us that is greater than what we are. We can claim our divinity. We can claim our oneness with God when we walk out of the tomb of fear-based thought. When we walk out of the tomb of our fear thoughts. So we're in our final chapter of this little book. The Lazarus Blueprint. Ancient secrets for healing and inner peace. And each chapter in this book is one step toward greater and greater awakening, one step toward healing. And the final chapter holds a key for us. The key for us to stay out of the tomb by releasing whatever our past identity was, to let go of all of our old roles. The story says, the dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth and his face wrapped in a cloth. And Jesus commanded, unbind him and let him go. Lazarus came out of the tomb in burial cloths. What was impossible became possible. What needed to be healed was healed, and Lazarus was restored to life. But wait, one final step is missing. Final step? What final step? The man who just emerged from the tomb was alive, wasn't he? Well, yes, in a way. However, he's still bound head to feet with strips of cloth, so the process cannot be complete. It can't stop here. How alive can he be with burial cloth wrapped around him and around his head? No way he can actively live his life, this life that he's just been given. What good is triumph over the impossible if you are still shrouded, wrapped up in the external wrappings of your past? To me, that was a profound thought. Unbind him and let him go, Jesus now commands. Discard that which is no longer relevant. Discard the no longer relevant past. Cast it aside forever and be the person who has just reappeared on the life scene. Remember the exact words of that clause? The dead man came out. It might have been more accurate to say the man who was dead came out. Yet, however, he is still bound with strips of cloth. His face is still wrapped in cloth. And what kind of life is that? His restoration to life is not complete. Jesus didn't say, okay, my work's done, I'm out of here. No, he said, unbind him and let him go. And so here we are, it's Palm Sunday. And we've used this book to look at the steps that it takes for each one of us to have a resurrection story. When we started this, some of you were already facing some kind of Lazarus experience. And since then, some of you have found out that you're in a situation or a circumstance that you could not have even imagined. And for those of us who think these steps don't apply, we will have that opportunity. I used to think that knowing spiritual principle and having a spiritual practice would insulate me from problems. But now I know that understanding spiritual principles and having a spiritual practice just helps me to walk through life when stuff happens, when shift happens. To walk through those things that I might label bad. So this week is the beginning of Holy Week when we look at another tomb story. And then the tomb story, and then the Easter story, the women, and the first thing in the morning, the women go to the tomb with their spices, fully expecting to find Jesus' remains. They didn't go there believing in the resurrection. They did not go to check to see if the tomb was empty. They took along the spices to prepare his body. And yet these were the very same people, they were the close friends who saw Lazarus raised from the dead. They didn't get it even still. And Jesus' words, all things are possible to him who believes. The women were in their old roles. The old role of worry, doubt, and fear. In John, it tells how Peter went to the tomb and he looked in and he said, the linen cloths are lying there, and the handkerchief that has been placed around his head is lying with the linen cloths, but folded together in a place by itself. The story, the part of this lesson is that once we've been raised from a tomb, our work is not done. You know how when you've been really ill and all of a sudden you feel good again? You know that feeling? That wonderful feeling, and you're so thankful. And then how jaded we get very quickly. We must release ourselves from the self-imposed wrappings that we have put on, that put us in that tomb in the first place. That which made us sick in the first place. That which broke the relation in the first place. Here are two accounts, Lazarus and Jesus. And they say that yes, we can be resurrected. Yet, if we're wrapped in the same thoughts and the same beliefs and the same attitudes and the same mindset as before, we are the same person as before, and we are not fully alive. Those words, the dead man came out, were for you and me, and each of us who've been in a tomb or in a situation that's we don't want to go back into. In all of the steps, we've been leading ourselves out of the tomb into new life. And so here's the test. What was our first step?
Turn away.
Turn away. Oh, we get the bad news. We don't dwell on it. We turn away. And the next step was remove the stone. Find out what it is, because it's in here. It's not out there. And as much as I would love to do the work for you, the only person I can do the work for is me. You're the only person that can do your work to find out what that stone is, that belief, idea, attitude, or thought. And the next step was to have great expectations. Some of you have been listening. Thank you. Expect that which is good. And then our next step was to do something in advance. Give thanks, yes. And then we have to make a strong command. Talk so that we believe. So that we believe up here and we believe down here in our heart. And this last step is to drop the role. You and I must stand guard at the doorway of our mind and not allow the thoughts that bound us up in the first place to come back and put us back. This week and next week, we're celebrating the fact that we can be reborn, that we can be resurrected in a metaphysical sense. And the time is now to release all the bindings of the past and to step forward into new life. During this Lazarus story, Jesus says, I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, that they may believe. And you may have a crowd of people. You're trying to let go of a relationship, heal an illness, let go of an addiction, and you have a crowd, and that crowd may be friends, they may be families, they may be casual acquaintances. There will be those who cannot see us as we're taking off those burial wrappings of our old self. And they don't want you to change. Because if you change, they'll have to change their belief system to accept your resurrection. For instance, there are 7 of us who signed up for the CHIP program, Complete Health Improvement Program. And while Gerald supports me in everything I do, I know that the idea of a plant-based whole food diet represents a big change in our home. A huge change. And thankfully, he supports me. He told me he would sacrifice and eat all the meat. I love you, Gerald. But sometimes what you and I have to do is bless the crowd and release them. Our work is to stay alive, to stay out of the tomb, and to rise in our new life. Our job is also to remember that we're one of the crowd. We have to convince ourselves that we are resurrected. As I walked through the grocery store looking for my rolled oats and my shredded wheat and my unsweetened almond milk and my grape nuts, I too had to see myself resurrected, because I know that there are many of me that doesn't believe, just like there are many of you that don't believe. You know, it would be nice to think that just having an awareness, a plant-based whole food diet cures all of chronic illness. That I could just have that awareness and snap, it would be done. It would be wonderful if I could just command a change through force of will and say, Beth will never eat anything but plant-based whole food again. But something has to happen. I have to discard the notion of who I was. I have to let go of my thoughts and my beliefs and my desires and the habits that reflect my old self. And yes, I'm finding it can be a challenge. It means I have to bear myself to life. I'm standing up here telling you all this. I have to allow myself to be vulnerable so everybody is going to know whether I succeed or fail. And you know what? It means I have to quit telling my old story of how much I love rare beef. I have to create a new story that reflects the new me. And then I have to live the new story. And it's the same in your life. Whatever the situation is going on, you have to have the new story of, I am a survivor. And you have to live, I'm a survivor. Unity of Melbourne is a dynamic unity, empowering people to change their lives and realize their dreams. We have to live that. You and I can make any number of external changes. to our house, our spouse, our job, our financial situation. But if we are holding on to our old story, we have not transformed. And guess what? From that place, we will inexorably move back toward the same circumstances as before. Oh, is that what we want to do? No. We want to move forward. So we have to have this new story, this new role, and we have to embody it, and we have to make a continued effort to stay focused on our new life. The old you does not really believe that it can live, survive without the old story. And it will tempt you to return again and again to your old habits and your old thinking. But we have a spiritual strength, a power. We call them 12 powers of spiritual ability, of strength, to be persistent. And the more we practice, what happens? The easier it gets. We become the new identity. Remember, after Jesus was resurrected, the disciples did not recognize him. Metaphysically, that tells us that some people may not be able to accept the new us. If that happens, what we have to know is that they are on their own journey, and we have to bless them and step back. I urge all of us, when we have someone in our lives who's making transformative steps, that we support them, and we look forward to seeing them in their new role. Support them by seeing them as their new selves. And Martha talked about that this last week. It's important for you and I to see Unity of Melbourne in a new way. We're not a little church on a 2-lane road. We're a dynamic ministry, empowering people. We have to have that. We have to embody that. There we are going to be on US 1, and we have to be able to say, we empower you to change your life with what we teach. You need to come here. We need to believe it, and we need to embody that. Jesus always saw people as whole. So let's let that be our gift to ourselves and all of those in our lives, to see them whole. Let's always see them better. The scientists who asked the manufacturers to limit the speed of trains to 30 miles per hour because they thought that the human body would explode, and the doctors that believed that sick people had to be bled to heal. These are people whose beliefs have not yet expanded. Today's lesson would, if they were listening to this, they would be doing their best to wrap you and I back into the belief that bodies would explode, that bleeding is the way. If they were here with that belief, that's what they would want us to do, to have those burial cloths on. Walt Whitman writes, re-examine all that you have been told and dismiss that which insults your soul. I say we must unlearn all that we have learned to become new, to be reborn, to be resurrected into new life. And you might wonder what all these palm fronds are doing on the floor up here. On Palm Sunday, Jesus rode into Jerusalem, a place of peace. And people were shouting his name and putting down palm fronds to pave the way. all of his family and his friends and disciples did not want him to go to Jerusalem, and they certainly did not want him to come in with a lot of fanfare. But he was stepping into his power. He was dropping all of his previous roles. He was saying, "Here I am." In a few moments, you will be given an opportunity to participate in a ritual. The ritual of walking on these palm fronds. Shoes on, shoes off, your choice. And if you do choose to come up and walk on the palm fronds, let it be just an outward sign of that inward choice that you are making to let go, to drop a role, to let go of the old, to change your thinking, to change a belief or an attitude. Know that walking the palms does nothing in the outer. It is an inner thing. It is symbolic to your heart and to your mind that you're serious about change. For some of us, it's a promise to continue with our new CHIP program. For me, that's what it is. For some of us, it's an opportunity to let go of seeing ourselves as a victim. Adopt a new story. Adopt that we're beloved children of God. For some of us, it might be the opportunity to drop a diagnosis and to see ourselves whole and well and free. For the others, it might be the opportunity to give up an addiction or a relationship that is holding us back. And so, we're going to sing our meditation song, and we will then have as part of our meditation a palm walk, and I'll be inviting people from the back to come forward, and we'll do it that way. And let us pray. Dear God, we too have made our journey into Jerusalem. We have walked on the palm branches as a reminder of Jesus' journey into Jerusalem many years ago. We have a deeper awareness that we are so much more than we realized. We have a deep awareness that the Christ presence is in us, that there is a place of peace and stillness from which all guidance and wisdom comes. We give thanks for Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem and his willingness to go through the crucifixion so we could see the story of resurrection and overcoming. We give thanks and know that we too can overcome and live in Jerusalem, a place of peace, a place of joy, a place of us in our new roles. For your presence and for one another, let's join together and raise our voices as we sing the Lord's Prayer.